26 minutes before the hour. What impact did our midterm victories have on women's reproductive health and the reproductive health and reproductive rights agenda? Wonder if there's anybody we could talk to about that. Oh, I know. Might that be Planned Parenthood, and particularly Planned Parenthood Action Fund? I think that's the ideal place to go. Here with the National Organizing Director for Planned Parenthood Action Fund, Kelley Robinson. Kelley, good morning to you.
Good morning, Mark. Thanks for having us on.
Oh, of course, it's a pleasure. Always a pleasure to have you guys on. So this is these midterms are a good thing, I would think, when it comes to women's reproductive health and our reproductive rights agenda, right?
Hey, you can definitely say that. We're really proud. I think that voters knew after the last 2 years of attacks that healthcare was on the ballot, and they came out in overwhelming favor for it. So I think that we're really excited by the fact that now the newly electeds really have a mandate from the people to use this newfound power to protect access to healthcare.
Well, and this also shows in the record number of women that voted and that, frankly, voted for Democrats. Because I mean, let's face it, it's the Democratic Party that has been most supportive and amenable to women's health.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. Look, at the end of the day, we are focused on making sure that all people are getting to the ballots because healthcare is at stake, particularly women voters. And I think you saw a couple of things this election cycle. One, over 100 women were elected to represent our communities in the House. That is huge. And not just women. I'm talking about women of color.
Right.
The first two Muslim women, the first two Native American women, the first two Latinx women, and two Black women from New England. And all of this, in addition to the record number of voters, is really showing that, hey, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, you need to be looking at women voters and prioritizing the issues that women care about. And top of line for women is health care.
You're right. And you all at Planned Parenthood, through Planned Parenthood Votes and other local organizations, people in Planned Parenthood were involved in the most active electoral work ever this year, weren't they, Kelley?
We sure were. It was really a beautiful program. I got to tell you, I got to spend a lot of time out in Michigan, traveling all over the state from Grand Rapids to Detroit to Flint. And it was really a beautiful thing being on the ground with folks. We did massive work in coalition with organizations that are focused on healthcare, but also focused on things like ending gun violence, economic justice, because we know at the end of the day, all of our rights are on the line.
Yeah.
So I'm really proud of the fact that we did some incredible work to mobilize infrequent voters. One of our programs in Nevada, we actually targeted 190,000 infrequent voters. Only 14,000 of those folks had voted in 2014. And we already know that more than 4 times that number of people have voted in the 2018 election. So the work that we're actually doing to create new voters, to make sure that they understand that, hey, when they come after our communities, they're coming after all of us, and create some unity. And then, the work that we've done on things like the ballot initiative in Florida to really bring new people into the movement has been really important. And I should say in Florida, we were really proud to be a part of the coalition effort that won rights restoration to ensure that folks who had felonies could restore their right to vote. That's 1.5 million new voters in Florida. That's going to change the dynamics in that state.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's very, very important. And now that you have more women in elected office, particularly in the House, it's going to be hard for the other side to continue to try and undermine the Affordable Care Act, and also to thereby undermine women's access to health care.
Absolutely. They're not going to be able to do it. We now have the champions that we need in the House to block those efforts, which is extremely important. I also think that when you look at the state level, we've got 15 new trifectas of Democratic and pro-women's health control. That's going to make an incredible deal when we think about expanding access to rights in some of the states that need it most. New Mexico, Illinois. This is going to be a big deal for increasing the people that have
Show me what democracy looks like! This is what democracy looks like!
And I think for us in the next year, we're really going to be thinking about policies to increase that access, looking at birth control, looking at ensuring everyone has.
We need to make sure that our anger is transformed into resistance.
Sure that no matter how much money you've got, you can
Why is your right to take away my right?
Primaries for the November election are adding to a historically diverse field of candidates.
That's the record number of women running for office this year.
More than 200 candidates are black, Hispanic, Native
really
American,
ought to
or
be
multiracial.
It ought to be natural. Women
Let your vote make a difference. Let your vote count.
Care, women's health choices
People power.
should not hang in the balance at all. That should just be something that should be a priority for everyone. It's still amazing that we have politics in this country where it's even up for debate when it comes to women of women of color in particular, because we've been out here. We've been out here voting in our interests. That's right.
Serving in our interests, volunteering for candidates that stand up for our rights. And what we need now is all the people that are elected to know that they've got a mandate from women and from women of color to stand up for issues that are in our interest. And healthcare, to your point, is at the top of that list because we deserve it. It's a human right.
Well, since you brought that up, as we talk about Planned Parenthood, ladies and gentlemen, Planned Parenthood action, the issue, Kelley, of women of color, black women, being consistent, unfortunately, white women have lagged somewhat. Now, it was better this time, but is it still what it ought to be? Are you confident that white women voters are catching up with black women in terms of knowing what's really at stake and doing the right thing? Because when black women vote, they're not just voting for black women, they're voting for all women. How do you feel in terms of white women catching up with that and being as consistent as black women when it comes to voting in the best interests of women overall and women's health care in particular?
We still have some work to do in educating folks. And I think in some places we're seeing that people aren't always voting in line with their values. So there's some education that we need to be doing with white women, yes. And I think a big part of our program is also making sure that we're talking to white women, folks in rural communities, not just to urban centers. We have some work to do with men. I'll tell you, we did some really good work in places like Oregon and West Virginia, talking to men about these issues. And that's important, too, that people understand that when we talk about healthcare and when we talk about women's health, it benefits the whole family.
Right.
But I think that, really what I believe, Mark, is that the story of this election is that we know that black women voted. 92% of black women supported Democrat candidates in the House. We know 73% of Latino women supported Democrats in the House races. But what we need to do is be expanding that electorate for them, getting more voters, because we know that when these folks get into the political process, they're voting in line with our interests. Right. And at the end of the day, oftentimes people talk about demographics as destiny. That's just not true unless we get these people registered and we get them into the voting system. And that means, yes, registering people to vote, particularly folks of color, but it also means addressing some of the systemic ways that our democracy has not been shaped for everyone.
Right.
I'm talking about thinking about things like rights restoration, tackling issues like voter suppression that we know is rampant across this country, and we're facing it on the ground day to day in Georgia. These are issues that I think are really important when we think about fixing democracy for everyone so that we truly have a representative system.
And that's exactly what we need. Kelley Robinson, folks, with Planned Parenthood Action Fund. But yet, Kelley, this, we're not out of the woods yet, are we? I mean, Donald Trump and his minions are still going to attack women's health care, particularly birth control, aren't they?
Yep. We do expect more attacks at the administrative level. Through making new rules, through offices like the Office of the Health and Human Services, or even executive actions. So you're right. We have to stay vigilant. And I love your tagline, we got to stay woke, because we have to do a lot of work as a populace to really, as a people, to really fight back on this, to ensure that we're holding this administration in check. But I think the thing that I want folks to know is that this is not impossible. We have held the line with this administration over 2 years of attacks, defeating attempts to, repeal the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, and defund Planned Parenthood 3 times. So we can do this again, and now we have a stakeholder of power with our newly elected Democrats and at the state level, some really good things that we've done to either break up super majorities of Republican control or to get some proactive Democratic control in states that will allow us to advance proactive policies. So you're right, we're not out of the woods, but we do have we have a real fight now to make sure that we're blocking those attacks. They're just not in line with our interests.
Planned Parenthood, folks, is ground zero in terms of providing health care, accessible health care to many women in our communities across the nation who otherwise would have nowhere else to go. I said health care, not abortion. That's not the main thing they do, even though that's the meme that is often projected. So we ought to support Planned Parenthood and all that they do. As I said, they're closest to the ground, interacting with women every single day. So this victory in the midterms goes a long way to ensure that women have affordable and unfettered access to health care, and to make sure that the emergency room is no longer the primary care doctor. Far too many of us for years go to the emergency room. That's our source of primary care, and that's got to change. Planned Parenthood is doing all it can to prevent that. Kelley Robinson is the National Organizing Director. Kelley, thank you. I support Planned Parenthood. Will continue to do so, and feel free to take advantage of these airwaves to educate, organize, and mobilize the masses to do what we need to do to be sure that folk keep the hands off Planned Parenthood, okay?
All right. Thank you. Thanks to all your listeners.
All right, Kelley. Have a great day, all right?
Take care.
Yeah,
keep fighting.
All right. You too now. Take care. 866-99-SIRIUS. So I got a snap poll up right now. Should we organize to boycott states where there are governors who are racist and who practice voter suppression? That's my question for you right now in these next few minutes of this hour. President of NAACP will join us at the top of the hour also. Brittany will have the news. Then next hour I may want to talk about Monica Lewinsky. I said I wasn't going to talk about Monica Lewinsky because I'm like, how many more times can we talk about that Clinton scandal? But is saying some interesting things in this documentary. Like she'd like to apologize to Hillary Clinton if she had the chance to see her in person. That probably ain't going to happen. To me, and there's a lot of debate about this, her victimization, and clearly in many ways she was a victim, but she also speaks to her own agency when she says, she did pursue him in many respects, and she says she seemed to enjoy being involved with someone that everybody else wanted. I knew a woman once who, how did I say this tactfully? I'm not going to say who it was, but whatever church she was in, she pursued a pastor. And I asked one day, so why you do that? Pastors are married and men are God. Why are you always? And for her, it was, as a woman, it was a power thing in her part. And that didn't make any of the pastors right. And I'm not saying everybody fell for it. She was saying how for her, the attraction was if a man who's in power, air quote, Mark, can somehow have his attention diverted toward me as opposed to that thing which he is centered on every day. She said that makes me feel important as a woman. It makes me feel powerful. So in her case, it was extreme. If a man devoted to God can then be devoted to her. And what Monica said was kind of similar to me. She said she liked the idea of being with someone that everybody else wanted. And I want to be clear, I don't want to minimize her victimization in that, because Bill still, I mean, President Bill, come on now, you got to know what all that means. Although I don't know whether who she was more victimized by, Bill or the Republicans. I mean, a case can be made, because a case can be made that what they did to her and what law enforcement did to her was even more damaging and detrimental. I mean, it's a possibility that if things had just run their course, she and Bill would have a relationship. Relationship probably would have ended at some point, like all relationships do, and life would have just gone on. I don't ever think we ever got the impression that he was going out to destroy her or ruin her life in the way that the investigation did. Anyway, I said I wasn't going to talk about it, but you see, I just did that. You see, I just said I wasn't going to talk about something and talked about it anyway. But we can discuss that a bit today. But what I really want to do is get you to respond to my snap poll. Should we consider? I'm just asking a question now because I'm talking to some folk. We're thinking about this. We're talking about this, and some of us are, and I'm just trying to get some thoughts going. I'm not calling for a boycott yet. I'm just asking if there's something we ought to consider, and if there's something you would consider in particular. Snap poll, boycott Florida, Mississippi, and Georgia for their racism and their voter suppression. All right. Chris is in Colorado. Chris, God bless you. Good morning. Get ready for impeachment. Go right ahead, Chris.
Yeah, hey, Mark. Generally speaking, I'm against boycotts because it would seem like it just affects average working people by lessening the demand. People's hours get cut, and it seems like these states that are enacting voter suppression, like in Ohio, like in Wisconsin, Florida, that these tend to be states with high African-American populations. Here in Colorado, it's a largely white state. Up in Oregon, I was also raised up there. It's very white. They just don't have this voter suppression effort. So I think it may indirectly doing more harm than good.
Okay. However, sometimes we don't have a choice. People had to boycott South Africa. And the people of South Africa say, you got to do it because we have to end apartheid. The low wages that some people get in these jobs anyway are not worth continuing to support, especially when they don't have the right to vote anyway.
Yeah.
That
solidarity.
That has to be considered also. But we're just thinking about it right now. I'm just trying to get people's thoughts on it, and your reaction is not an uncommon one. It's not out of the blue. Carol's in Florida. What do you think? God bless you, Carol. Good morning. Get ready for impeachment.
Well, my only thought was, can we wait till after the recount? Because I'm still very hopeful. There's so many weird things down here that I think the recount hopefully is going to uncover some of it. And the fact that Rick Scott is so rabid about stopping everything, there has to be something really funny. And you know what? I want to get rid of this man. I mean, we've had him for 8 years as our governor, and the thought that he could be a senator just makes me want to puke. And if we have to do that to get rid of him, even though I live here, but I'm kind of hopeful, though. I mean, there's too many strange things that happen down here. You know, I can't believe that youth turnout was so high, and they elected the racist DeSantis and him. I mean, there's something funny.
Oh, it is, and I still don't get people voting to restore ex-felon voting rights, voting to end dog racing, which are
and then
issues,
voting for these people,
right,
yeah.
which are issues that invoke compassion and empathy. So you do that, and then you say, "Oh, let me vote for DeSantis and Rick Scott now."
Absolutely. And how do you have higher standards for people to vote than you do your actual politicians? I mean, Rick Fraud is true, is the biggest Medicare fraudster and liar in the history of Florida. Right. So, you know, you can't have these high standards for voters and then not care about your politicians. You know, I mean, that doesn't make sense either. Because I asked that question too. How did you vote for that, but these two people are leading? No way.
Now, mind you, I'm not calling for a boycott yet. I'm just trying to see where people are in case we do need to pull that trigger.
You know what? If it works, you know, I mean, I'm for it if it works, even though I live here. I'm actually kind of thinking of retiring to a blue state anyway, because especially if they win. So, I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Enjoy your day.
Bye.
All right, President NAACP is going to join us now in his new time slot. We'll get to other calls. Jenny, I see you. We'll get to everyone. Sirius XM Progress 127 Resistance Radio. Get woke. Get ready for impeachment. This is MIP.